Alright, so let's talk about the most pointless remake that I think I have ever seen, which is Gus Van Sant's Psycho. Starring Vince Vaughn, Anne Heche, Julianne Moore, Viggo Mortensen, and William H. Macy. Um, like, it's weird. This movie, like, it is the most devoted remake I have ever seen in terms of, like, being almost to a T exact to the original film, but in color with different actors. And almost all the dialogue is recycled and used again, and then almost every shot, not every shot, but there's a lot, almost, I'd say like 90-95% of the shots are the exact same. It's so odd because I appreciate the effort to make something like this and the devotion to this, but why? Like, that's why a lot of people hate it, because it's just literally the exact same movie, but there are things that are worse, but there are things that are exactly the same, so it doesn't, it's in this weird spot where I don't think I hate it. I don't hate this movie. I can watch it. I've watched it a lot of times, but it's just so weird how it's literally 95% the same movie. Like, it is literally that 95% of the same movie as the original. But like I said, with color, with different actors, and a couple different tiny little tweaks that don't even affect the story or plot at all. It's so weird. So for right now, I'm going to point out, the first thing I'm going to point out in this review is the things that I think that are different than the original, or what the movie thinks is trying to be different than the original. But literally all these things I'm going to mention have no effect on the story or plot, so they're completely pointless. All these little changes to this film from the original. Like, the color font is green whenever the movie opens, which makes it so not scary. Like, the black and whiteness of the original film made with the score, with Bernard Herrmann's score, it made it scary, but having the opening credits with color and it's green, that's weird. That's a weird color to, like, red would have been an appropriate color for this. Like, why is it green? Like, I don't get that, honestly. And maybe they would have thought this was what Hitchcock wanted, and maybe he did. I don't know. I didn't look this up, but maybe he wanted the color green if it wasn't in black and white for the opening credits. But for all I know, he didn't, but he might have. But the opening credits, it's so weird that they're green. That does not shout horror to me. Like, red would have been an appropriate, like, color for the opening credits. But maybe they're too on the nose. Like, this movie is way more on the nose than the original, especially with Vince Vaughn's interpretation of Norman Bates. So maybe they didn't want to be more on the nose than they are in this movie already. So yeah, the opening credits are green for some reason, and then it gets a full crane shot because the original movie didn't have enough of a budget to, and I don't know if they had the technology to do a full crane shot like they do in this movie. So yeah, that's really important that they had to make this movie just to do something like do the full crane shot. Like, in the original, they didn't do that because either they didn't have the technology or the money, but like, it just kind of does some fade cuts in the original where it shows the outside of Arizona, and then zooms in on the apartment building where, like, Marion and Sam are. But like, it shows the whole thing in this one, so cool. That's a cool addition, I guess. But it's, again, completely pointless. Completely and utterly pointless. It's a cool shot, though, but it's completely and utterly pointless. And this isn't from the movie, but from the commentary that had Anne Heche and Vince Vaughn in it for this movie. Anne Heche says that her iteration of Marion Crane is different. And I have no idea why she says that. I don't understand at all. The lines are exactly the same. The only thing I could think is that she says stuff with more of a assertive way of saying something. Like, she's a little more assertive, which, yeah, that makes her character different. No, not in any way. It didn't make her character different at all. I don't get that. And then Viggo Mortensen, who plays Sam Loomis in this, is a more quote-unquote rednecky version of Sam Loomis because it's 1998. And then there's like there's a money difference where it's just like the money is $400,000 instead of $40,000. Yeah, that adds a lot to that plot. And then there's a dumb thing where I noticed this because I watched the original one again just like a week ago. So I remember that very clearly, and I watched this one and I noticed something different that doesn't even matter again in this movie, where the character who's the secretary in the office that's with Marion Crane, who Rita Wilson plays in this movie, she gets up this time and says that line, "He must have seen my wedding ring," instead of her sitting down like in the original. Like again, like stuff like that makes this movie warranted, doesn't it? Like she gets up and stands and says a line instead of sitting down and saying a line. God, this is just so, it's fascinatingly bad. Like, it is a fascinatingly bad movie. I really am, it's so interesting. And I like to point out these differences because they think that they're different, but they're really not. There's barely anything that even attempts to warrant existence for this movie. And you could tell the boss was more drunk whenever Marion drove by at the stop walk, which honestly, I think that does help the plot a tiny bit, in which, in the original, Marion stops at the crosswalk when she's leaving town with the money. She sees that guy and her boss. Her boss just looks at her in the original like, "Oh, is that Marion?" But in this one, he looks at her, but looks more drunk, I guess, if that makes any sense. But he looks more drunk, so then that to me makes it make more sense that she got out and left scot-free, because if he wasn't drunk, and it didn't look like he was really drunk in the original, but if he was not drunk, then he would have immediately gone up to her and said, "What are you doing, Marion? Like, where are you going?" But I thought it was funny that in this, it looked like he was more drunk, so it made it more obvious for her to be able to leave town, as opposed to like if he wasn't and just saw her, he'd go up to her and talk to her like, "Where are you going?" Because she's leaving town. So I thought that was a tiny little thing that was kind of cool. Even though it is minuscule and makes no difference at all to anything. And then she gets to the car place, and the song Living Dead Girl is playing because it's 1998. And it's so on the nose because Living Dead Girl, she's about to die. She's going to go to the motel and die. You know this is happening, so they have to make it so obvious to put in Living Dead Girl. And like I said, this movie is really good at being on the nose and not much of a mystery. Like, it's really good at being more on the nose than the original. The original is a great mystery, and you just would not expect what happens in that. But in this one, with Vince Vaughn's character, whenever she meets Norman Bates, Vince Vaughn in this movie, Norman Bates in this version is so creepy, where he immediately she should have immediately gotten a signal like, "I better get the fuck out of here because this guy is crazy." And in the original, he did have lines where he was acting strange to Marion Crane in the original, but it was way more subtle, and Anthony Perkins, it shows how great of an actor he is. But it's not subtle in this. Like, he has this creepy laugh whenever he speaks, and it makes it ruin the mystery of it. It's like, you immediately, like, know that it's him as the killer. It's like, as he has those creepy mannerisms that Anthony Perkins didn't have that actually make this movie lesser, like, in terms of that. Like, it's not a mystery because Vince Vaughn, you see him, you understand that this guy is a fucking creep and he's got something up with him, and then of course he's the killer like in the original, but it's so much more obvious in this one. Extremely obvious. And I don't hate him. I don't hate his performance, Vince Vaughn, but it's just way more on the nose. It's really obvious. It's just like, okay, And I guess this is a tiny difference. The Bates house looks a little different. It's not like I don't know how to explain it, but it has a different look to it, and that warrants existing, right? And then we get to a scene that actually is legitimately different than the original film, where Marion goes into her motel room, and then Norman Bates in the original looks at her through the peephole But in this movie, Vince Vaughn literally just jacks off to watching her, and like it. I guess it adds to the sexual repression that he's having, but then because after he does that, he goes and kills her because Mother doesn't want anybody to be with him, like they're together kind of in a creepy way. So it's weird that they've got that scene of Vince Vaughn masturbating to her through the peephole instead of like the original. He just looks at her. It kind of adds again to the creepiness and the obviousness that he's the killer. Like it doesn't give it doesn't make it any less obvious. Like the original, like I said, moments like that are not in the original, and that makes it more better and more of a mystery because you just see him look in there like he's got something up with him. You don't know what. In this one, you know immediately what he has. And then this is a funny little nod I noticed because this is a 1998 Universal movie that came out the same year as Bride of Chucky, and the shower curtain. In Bride of Chucky, there's a scene where Chucky goes into the bathroom and to kill Tiffany, and he goes into that reflective shower curtain and puts his face up and makes a noise, and that looks exactly like the same shower curtain from that movie in this, which is a small thing to note on, but I'm like, that looks similar to that. That was a funny little thing. If maybe they used the same shower rod. Like I just thought that was hilarious. I was like, that looks just like the same one. Because of the zoom in on Chucky's face in that movie, looking through the thing, it looked just like it, and I was like, okay, that was a funny little connection. And then you get that shower scene, which is one of the most famous scenes ever made from the original movie. And it's the same here, just in color, and then while she's getting stabbed, it has images of random clouds. Why? Like, I think they said in the commentary, like, one of the two commentaries I listened to, like, they said that they put in these insertion shots of these creepy things to make him seem more deranged. But it didn't have to have that. It didn't have to have a weird shot of clouds. And whenever Arbogast gets killed later, it has some weird, stupid stuff in it, too. But what's the point of that? That literally adds nothing to the movie at all. And I guess this is different because you see Marion's cut marks in her asshole because, like, she falls down and, like, her butt is positioned up to where you see her butthole. I'm like, what does that add? That's just so stupid. That literally adds nothing to the movie. And I just thought that was hilarious that they purposefully shot it to where she falls down and you see her butt. I'm like, okay. Like, that just doesn't add anything, but it's hilarious. And then apparently Julianne Moore's character Lila, whenever she comes into the picture after Marion's been killed and she talks to Sam Loomis, she's apparently a lesbian. They said in the commentary, but why? Like, there's literally nothing that qualifies to make her a lesbian. She just, like, literally, they said, like, something in her mannerisms, like, so what? That doesn't even matter or pertain to anything in the plot. It makes nothing change. Why? Like, again, so I had no idea she was a lesbian, but in the commentary, they're like, oh yeah, she's a lesbian. I'm like, I wouldn't have known that unless you said that, but also, it doesn't matter. Like, that literally adds nothing to the plot if she's a lesbian or not, like, at all. Just so pointless. And then the Arbogast kill I was talking about, where it's the second kill where, right when he gets him, like with Marion, where Marion had the shots of the clouds while she was getting stabbed, it has these shots of like a woman in a blindfold and then some pigs for no reason. Like, again, what the fuck? Like, it's supposed to be like, oh, it's supposed to make him more like messed up in his mind, demented. You see this imagery, and I'm like, that doesn't do anything, like, at all to literally add to anything. And then the only other thing that I could think of that's different is that the end credits, because the original doesn't have end credits because it's from 1960 and the opening credits were the credits. In this one, whenever Norman says the famous line, like his mother says the line, like, I wouldn't touch a fly or hurt a fly, it cuts out to the swamp pulling out the car, and then it shows, like, through the whole credits, like, the car getting pulled out, them just talking, and then cuts to the landscape. But I guess that's pointless, but okay. So those are all the differences I could find. Like there literally is nothing that adds up to a change in plot, except for the thing to make Norman Bates look even more creepier and even more obvious as who the killer is. It's obviously him. There's nothing is not implying that. In this movie, the original is way more of a mystery. If he went into it not knowing what the twist is, it would have been a surprise. In this one, it's so obvious, just completely obvious. And I can give a couple all right things about this. Like Anne Heche and Julianne Moore are fine, but again, they're just copying like the lines from the first movie. So it's like, what else can they do? Vince Vaughn is just like poor Vince Vaughn. Like I don't know what to think about his performance, because I don't know if he was supposed to be more on the nose, or if Gus Van Sant said that, or if he just did it on his own. But his character is way more on the nose than the original. It makes it seem so much less of a mystery. And I don't hate him in the movie. I'm just like, it just does not like the original at all. It's not as good in any way. But he's not terrible. And then Viggo Mortensen is the same, but he's just kind of more of a rednecky character than Sam Loomis, the original Sam Loomis. So it's just, again, adds nothing. It's just a different like mannerism to how he talks. I liked William H. Macy. William H. Macy is really cool. It shows how good of an actor he is, because he's doing the same role as the original, but I thought he was good. I thought he gave a legit performance. And there was one scene which I don't remember if it's in the original, but because I already forgot, but Julianne Moore, Lila, has a scene where she like is in Norman's room, like his childhood room, and she sees a triple mirror thing. So like the mirror will, like she looks up, she thinks she sees another person behind her, but it's a triple mirror, so it's her again, and she goes, and like that was a good scare, like a good jump scare. It surprised me, honestly. I was like, whoa, cool. That actually worked for me, that one little scene. But yeah, that's all I can give it. That literally, there's nothing to warrant this existing. It's fascinatingly bad in the way isn't it's just the same movie again, but in color with actors which for the most part aren't as good, even though they're already good actors in the first place, but they're just copying lines from the original, so it's not anything different, nothing original. I just say it's the most pointless remake in existence.